Hi second graders, it's Mrs. Burke here, and I'm so excited that we're going to be starting the unit of time this week. So I know a lot of you are already very familiar with time because it's something we do every day by telling the time. So this lesson might seem familiar, which is great. We're going to use this large clock here to help us to talk about time today. So this is called an analog clock. An analog clock has set numbers that are always visible on the clock and two hands of a clock, just like we have two hands. But you're going to notice that on a clock, one hand is shorter and one hand is longer. And if you look even more closely, this long hand is capable of skimming all the numbers so it can touch all of these large numbers. But if you look even closer, it's also touching these smaller numbers on the bottom. So it can touch the 30, now it's over the 35, the 40. Where my hour hand is not able to reach those smaller numbers. That's because these smaller numbers represent minutes. And this is not a minute hand. This is just the hour hand. So the hour hand only needs to let us know which hour we're in, which is why it's smaller, because it's just focusing on these larger hours. Now, in one day we have 24 hours. However, our clock is split up into 12 hours, which means we are going to see each hour on this clock 2 times a day, because 12 hours plus 12 more hours will give us the 24 hours in a day. And if you think about 7 o'clock, you might first wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then at 7 o'clock at night, you might be taking a bath, right? So we're going to see that 7 o'clock hour twice a day, just like all of these other hours. And then each hour is split into 60 minutes, all right? And not every single minute is represented with a number on a clock. Instead, they represent every 5 minutes. So a great warm-up before all of your math lessons this week would be to skip count from 0 to 60 by 5s. That's a really great way to warm up for time. So we could try that right now. So let's start at 0 and let's count by 5s. And I'll actually point to the clock as we do it so you could see where on the clock that minute is represented. So we have 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And once we get to this 60, rather than seeing a 60 represented, we see a 00, or we'll say o'clock, okay? So you'll never see a time that says 360 or 560. Instead, it would go to the next hour, and it would say 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock. All right, so how to tell time. When we're telling time to the nearest hour, you have to first look at your shorthand. That is going to tell you what hour we are in. So right now, my hour hand, the shorthand, is pointed straight at the 9, right on it, like an arrow. And you'll notice that my larger hand is straight vertically up, okay? So this, if you uncover the number, is on the 60 or the o'clock. So I would read this as 9 o'clock. Let's try another one. Here, look for my shorthand first, which is right here. What hour is it pointing at? The 11. Remember, we're looking at just the big numbers for my shorthand. And then I noticed that my minute hand is covering the 12th hour, or looking even closer, the 60 minutes. So this would be 11 o'clock. Let's try another one. Okay. Here I look for my shorthand, which is right here. It's pointing directly at the 2, and my minute hand is still on the 60, or right over that 12 hour. So the time would be 2 o'clock. All right, try this one on your own. All right, what time is it? Think about, where is my little hand pointing? And is my minute hand on the o'clock? So this would be 5 o'clock. Now are you ready for the tricky ones that sometimes people have a harder time with? This one is tricky because a lot of people see that straight line and it takes their eyes a minute to adjust, but let's look for the smaller hand. The smaller hand is the one that touches just the hours. So we have this, which is pointing at the 6, and our minute hand is on o'clock. So it's 6 o'clock. And the last tricky one, I'll tell you what some of my students say. Here's the last tricky one. Some of my students might say, oh, your clock is broken. It only has one hand. But really, there is a hiding hand right there. So where is that clock hour hiding? On the 12. So what time is it? 12 o'clock. And this is going to be the only time of the day where you only see one hand of the clock because the other hand is hidden behind it. So if you only see one, you can be rest assured, okay, that's because it's 12 o'clock. All right, so now let's think about the half hours. You might have heard times like 2:30, 3:30, 5:30, right? That 30 minutes is located right down here on a clock. And if you look closely, you can see the number 30. It's always paired up with the 6, all right? And what happens is when I get to 30 minutes, I've gone halfway around my clock, or my hour is half done, because the hour is 60 minutes. Half of 60, cut the clock in half, and you're gonna land on the 30 minutes. Now, this is what happens though. Let's say we're starting at 2 o'clock, okay? My hand is directly on my 2, and my hour is straight up. Now watch what happens. As the hour starts to tick by, I want your eyes to be on my hour hand. Watch what happens as I move this. What's happening to that hour hand? You see something happening? And I'm not even touching it. Something magical is happening. What happened? Just 30 minutes ago when I was at o'clock, my shorthand was right on my 2, smack on my 2 like this. But as I moved halfway around the clock, look what happened to my hour hand. It started moving closer to the 3. That's because I'm halfway done now with the 2 o'clock hour, and I'm on my way to 3 o'clock, but I'm not there yet. I'm halfway there. And now this hour hand is halfway between my 2 o'clock and my 3 o'clock. It's still the 2 o'clock hour though. So I would read this time as 2:30. Or you might hear someone say half past 2 o'clock or half past 2. Let me show you another one. Let's start at 5 o'clock. And I want you to notice when we start at 5 o'clock, I want you to notice where my hour hand is. Now watch what's going to happen as I move towards 5:30. Moving, look at that hour hand. Something's starting to happen. Look where it is now. It's no longer pointing at my 5 because I've now moved halfway around my clock. So I'm halfway into the hour or half past 5 o'clock. So this time now is still my 5 o'clock hour, but it's getting closer and closer to 6 o'clock. So this time is 5, it's still 5 o'clock, but now it's 5:30. All right, 5:30, halfway between the 5 and the 6. Okay, let me do another one. Here I have 7 o'clock. Let me move my time to here. So what time is it now? Well, it's halfway between 7 and 8, but I didn't get to 8 o'clock yet. It's not 8 o'clock yet. It is still 7:30. All right, try this one. All right, what time does this clock say? Look at the hour hand. Which two numbers is it in between? So stay in the same hour. We never made it to 11 o'clock yet, so it still must be 10:30. All right, and last one. I'll do a sneaky one that sometimes is a little tricky. Here we go. Sometimes this can be a tricky one. So, it's tricky because my hour is hidden. But what hour is under there? My 6, right? So my hour hand is in between my 6 and my 7. But I didn't make it to 7 o'clock yet. I'm halfway there. So it's still 6 o'clock with 30 minutes of the hour. So this time would be 6:30. Okay? So that's how I want you to practice telling time to the nearest hour and the nearest half hour. And I'll also post a video with a song that you might enjoy that you can just watch for fun. And keep practicing. And throughout the day today, if you want to know what time it is, instead of looking at a cell phone, which has a digital clock, or your stove or oven, which has a digital clock, or your computer, a lot of clocks are digital now. See if you can find somewhere in your house an analog clock that looks like this, and try to tell the time first, and then you can always check it on your digital clock. Or maybe mom or dad have a watch that has an analog clock on it too. All right? Good luck, boys and girls. See you soon.